by China. Let me get in a word from Stephen joining us from Beijing. Stephen, thank you so much for taking time out. First up, help us understand what is the reaction from the Chinese general public that you gauge on social media, within the Chinese civil society? How is this visit being assessed?
Arunima, it's interesting that the Chinese reactions, especially on social media platforms, seem to have been even stronger than the official response. Probably not surprising after nationalistic sentiment has been stoked by state media for so long before this visit. Now, it's interesting to note that as soon as Pelosi's plane landed in Taiwan, the Chinese government announced a series of live-fire military drills around the island. But they were supposed to start on Thursday after Pelosi's expected departure from Taiwan. But amid this growing online backlash against their government's perceived lackluster response, the Chinese military seems to have now pushed the drills starting time forward by having a second announcement saying those drills would now start immediately on Tuesday. So, you know, this kind of drills involved not only firing conventional missiles, but also shooting down hypothetical air and land targets, as well as practicing a blockade. Arunima?
Right, but overall, I mean, that's the concern. The fact that where is this leading to? Do you get a sense that China is only flexing muscles? They've, of course, announced some trade sanctions, not allowing natural sand trade to happen. But in terms of military escalation, how do you see the situation developing?
You know, it's interesting from the Chinese perspective. Of course, their officials and state media have been describing these drills as unprecedented in terms of their proximity to Taiwan, but also their scale and intensity. And then, of course, they have also announced political, probably more important economic sanctions against Taiwan by halting, for example, the export of natural sand to the island. And that's an important component to the semiconductor industry, which, of course, is very important to Taiwan. They also have banned the import of more than 100 types of Taiwanese fruits and seafood. All of this, of course, is not surprising. But what's interesting is we're starting to see Chinese state media seemingly trying to temper down expectations, public expectations of in terms of what's going to happen by saying things like a complex historic issue like Taiwan cannot be resolved overnight, and also highlighting how they have been exercising quote-unquote restraint by giving peaceful reunification with Taiwan one last chance. Arunima?
And before I let you go, Stephen, the fact that, you know, we've heard some conciliatory voices. For example, the US National Security Coordinator said that, you know, we will not engage in saber rattling. We will not do anything to increase tension. So while Nancy Pelosi has just praised Taiwan for its stance, there are also other voices that we are hearing from Washington, from New York. So is this damage control going to calm down tempers in China, in Beijing in any way?
You know, what Nancy Pelosi says or does in Taiwan now matters very little to the Beijing government. As soon as her plane landed in Taiwan, from their perspective, a reckless and proactive act has been committed. And also remember, they've known her for decades. She's been a thorn on their side because she's a staunch critic of Beijing, especially its human rights record. So also it's worth noting it's not the first time a sitting U.S. House Speaker visited Taiwan. The last time happened, of course, was Newt Gingrich when there in 1997. But what's changed in the past 25 years, of course, is Beijing's calculations of its own strength. Now they have upgraded missile capabilities to strike aircraft carriers. They have their own aircraft carriers. That's why we've been seeing these increasingly frequent incursions into Taiwan's air defense zone, not to mention Beijing's increasingly hardline policy towards Taiwan. So that's why there is a genuine debate going on in Washington, as you mentioned, about maybe it's time to rethink about the U.S. policy on Taiwan, which, of course, is the so-called one China policy and strategic ambiguity. A lot of people think that worked as long as Beijing believed it was weaker than the U.S. Now it's clearly not a case. It's time for a rethink, and that, of course, could have major implications not only for the region but also for the whole world. Arunima?
Right. So it's a very fluid situation, fast developing. Stephen Jiang, thank you so much for taking time out, joining us live from Beijing. Stephen Jiang there telling us what really is the mood in China. How is the situation that is unfolding in Taiwan being assessed? Now, there are other reactions.